Alright, you lot, let's talk about something that's probably more controversial than Marmite. Uwe Boll's video game movies. Yeah, I said it, and no, I'm not here to jump on 8 Train. In fact, I got a list of his best game adaptations. Well, ones I've seen, anyway. Spoiler, they're not as bad as you remember, if you squint a bit. But before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe and all that bollocks. It helps the channel grow and keeps me ranting about gaming gems and disasters just for you. Right, let's dive in. Right then, let's kick this list off with number 10, McGaming 3. Now I know what you're thinking, how did this even make cut? But here's the thing, Uwe Boll's third crack at this franchise, and I use term loosely, actually managed to be somewhat watchable. Well, if you're 3 pints in and in mood for medieval mad. Plot, Hazen, a modern day assassin, somehow gets yeeted back to Middle Ages, cause reasons. He's gotta battle dragons, fight an evil king, and rescue some royal family's daughter. Yeah, it's basically a fever dream or a Hitman meets Game of Thrones. And CGI? Ropey. Acting? Questionable. Story? Bit of a mess. But it's that kind of so bad it's good train wreck that keeps you watching just to see what ridiculous thing happens next. Honestly, it's a perfect movie for a laugh with your mates. Or if you've completely run out of hotels to watch. Now let's move on before I change my mind about including this one. Coming in at number 9, we got Bloodrayne III Reich. Yep, it's exactly what it sounds like. Rain, half human, half vampire badass, taking on Nazis in World War II. And no, it's not as cool as description makes it sound. To be fair, concept had potential. Vampires versus Nazis. Sign me up. But what we got were a low-budget slog that looks like it spent its entire production budget on fake blood and leather corsets. Rain joins a resistance group to take on Nazis. Somewhere in middle of all gore and bad dialogue, there's a story about stopping a vampire-obsessed SS officer. There's a campy charm to some fight scenes, and Natasha Malk gives her best shot at Rain. But let's not pretend this is high art. It's a B-movie through and through. If you're into schlocky action horror with a sprinkle of historical nonsense, this one's for you. Let's keep this train wreck rolling. Sliding into number 8 spot is McGaming 2. Now this one stars Dolph Lundgren. Yeah, that Dolph Lundgren. Local punch Rocky and made us all think he'd crush us like a tin of beans. And let me tell you, seeing him in medieval fantasy setting is as bizarre as it sounds. Story? Dolph plays Granger, an ex-special ops soldier who gets sucked into Middle Ages cause some prophecy about him saving a kingdom. Its thing though, it's not completely awful. Dolph delivers his usual brand of stoic badassery, and there's something oddly amusing about watching him try and make sense at bonkers world while swinging swords and dodging dragons. CGI, as expected, is pants, and story is held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. But if you got a soft spot for cheesy action flicks where hero just looks like he's so sick of everyone's nonsense, this one's worth watching. Barely. Now we're moving on before I convince myself to rewatch it. Number 7 on this glorious list of cinematic triumphs is Far Cry. Based on game series we all know and love, this one took name, shoved it into a blender with bad acting and nonsensical plot, poured out summer. Story follows a journalist investigating a shady military base on a remote island. To get there, she hires a boatman named Jack Carver, played by Til Schweiger. And yeah, Jack's an ex-special forces soldier, cause apparently that's Boll's go-to character archetype. What follows is a series of explosions, cringeworthy one-liners, and enough plot holes to sink bloody island. Now, if you're a fan of Far Cry games, let me save you a heartache. This film has almost naught to do with him. Iconic tropical settings there, sure, but tone and story, completely unrecognisable. But, and it's a big but, if you turn off your brain and just roll with chaos, it's almost fun in a ridiculous, so bad it's entertaining kind of way. Look, I won't lie to you, it's not good, but it's not worst thing Boll's ever done, and that's high praise for this list. Let's move on to number 6 before I start regretting putting this above McGaming 2. Coming in at number 6 is House at Dead. If you've ever wondered what would happen if someone turned an arcade zombie shooter into a movie with absolutely no understanding of pacing, story or basic filming, well, here's your answer. Plot, or whatever passes for one, follows a group of friends heading to a rave on a remote island. But, surprise, surprise, island's overrun by zombies. Now, instead of running for their lives like normal people, they decide to fight back. What ensues is a barrage of slow-motion action sequences, awkward camera angles, and random clips from actual House at Dead games shoved into film for no apparent reason. Look, I'll be honest, this movie's awful. Acting, painful. Dialogue, even worse. But here's the thing, it's so absurdly bad that it somehow loops back to being entertaining. It's like watching a train derail in slow motion. You just can't look away. If you go into this expecting a faithful adaptation at game, you're going to be disappointed. But if you grab a few mates, crack open some beers and embrace chaos, you might just have a good time. Or at least a laugh at how ridiculous it all is. Now that's enough zombie nonsense. Let's shuffle on to number 5. And at number 5 is Bloodrayne II: Deliverance. Imagine original Bloodrayne movie, but swap out gothic vampire vibes for dusty Wild West setting. That's right, this time Rain's fighting vampires in cowboy boots. 'Cause why not? Story follows Rain taking on Billy Kid, who's not just a notorious outlaw but also a vampire now. He's building an army of bloodsuckers, and it's up to Rain to stop him. Sounds cool, right? Well, execution, let's just say it's less spaghetti western and more microwave meal gone wrong. Acting's predictably a mixed bag. Natasha Mouth does her best to what she's given, but script doesn't do her any favours. And Billy Kid as a vampire is about as intimidating as a toddler with fake fangs. Action scenes are clunky, dialogue's laughable, and whole thing feels like it were cobbled together over a long weekend. But here's the thing, not completely unwatchable. There's a certain charm to its absurdity, and if you're into vampires, westerns, or just want to see how far off rails Boll can go, it's worth a look. So, let's saddle up and move on before tumbleweeds take over. Coming in at number 4 is Alone in Dark 2. Sequel that nobody really asked for, and honestly it barely has aught to do with first movie, or games for that matter. But here we are, so let's unpack this supernatural oddity. This time around, Edward Carnby teams up with a group of hunters to take down centuries old witch, Elizabeth Dexter. Sounds promising, right? Well, don't get your hopes up. What we get instead is a low-energy paranormal adventure filled with clunky dialogue, wooden acting, and effects that look like they were rendered on a potato. Saving grace, Torn's slightly less chaotic than its predecessor, tries to go for a darker, moodier vibe, which occasionally works. And to its credit, there's at least some semblance of coherent story here, even if it is about as engaging as watching paint dry. Look, this is far from a good movie, but if you're a fan of supernatural horror and can tolerate some painfully bad filmmaking, you might find some twisted enjoyment in it. Or at very least, it's a decent background movie for when you're folding laundry. Right, let's move on to number 3. Things can only get better, right? Well, at number 3 is movie that started it all, Alone in Dark. A Uwe Boll classic, or disaster, depending on your perspective, based very loosely on game series. This one's infamous for all wrong reasons, but somehow it still lands this high on list. Why? Let's break it down. Christian Slater as Edward Carnby, paranormal investigator with a tragic past, joined by Tara Reid as a scientist who might as well be made of cardboard. Together, they're up against ancient creatures unleashed by a shady government experiment. It's part horror, part action, and completely bonkers. Acting? Painful. Script? Laughably bad. Editing? So chaotic it feels like film itself is trying to escape. And yet, Alone in Dark has this bizarre charm that makes it hard to completely hate. It's kind of film that's so confident in its nonsense that you almost respect it. Real highlight? Unintentional comedy. Between Christian Slater's deadpan delivery and awkward action sequences, you'll be laughing far more than you're supposed to. Is it a good movie? Not even close. But it's memorable, and in realm of Uwe Boll adaptations, that's saying something. But let's not linger too long. Number 2's up next, and things are about to get bloody. Because we got Bloodrayne, original movie that kicked off Uwe Boll's bloody attempt at adapting one of game's most iconic femme fatales. And you know what? It's not worst thing he's ever done. But let's not get carried away. This is still Uwe Boll movie. Story follows Rain, a Dampier, half human, half vampire, on a quest for vengeance against her father, Kagan, vampire king who's basically Dracula without charisma. Along the way, she teams up with a group of vampire hunters to stop Kagan's evil plan. Sounds epic, doesn't it? Too bad execution fell flatter than a stake through art. Let's talk about cast. Kristanna Loken gives her all as Rain, but she's stuck with a script that seems to have been written during a pub crawl. Meanwhile, Sir Ben Kingsley, yeah, that Ben Kingsley, shows up as Kagan, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. And don't get me started on Michael Madsen, who looks like he wandered onto the set by accident. But here's the thing, film has a certain campy charm. Fight scenes, while clunky, have an old school B-movie vibe, and gratuitous violence is so over the top it borders on parody. Not to mention Kristanna Loken in that outfit. Kinda gets things stirring, if you know what I mean. If you're a fan of Bloodrayne games though, don't expect much in way of faithfulness. This is more inspired by than based on. Still, as far as Uwe Boll movies go, this one is surprisingly entertaining in its own ridiculous way. But it's not quite #1 material. Let's get to top spot and see what really takes cake. Yeah, claiming top spot at #1 is In Name at King, a Dungeon Siege Tale. Now don't get me wrong, this movie's a mess, but it's Uwe Boll's most ambitious mess, and for that, it earns its crown. Starring Jason Statham as Farmer, yeah, his name is literally Farmer, his film's a fantasy epic with everything, evil sorcerers, epic battles, and a whole lot of questionable decisions. Plotful as Farmer as he sets out to rescue his kidnapped wife and avenge his son, all while fighting against an army of monstrous Krugs, led by Ray Liotta, who plays an evil sorcerer with subtlety or a pantomime villain. Cast is stacked, featuring names like Ron Perlman, Burt Reynolds, Matthew Lillard, and Lee Sobieski, but don't expect Oscar-worthy performances. Most of them look like they're wondering how they ended up in a Boll movie. Statham, however, delivers his usual action hero charm, which carries film further than it probably deserves. Production values are surprisingly decent for a Boll flick, with some impressive set pieces and action scenes. Though CGI ain't aged well. Story's derivative, pacing's all over the place, and dialogue's hilariously bad. But despite its flaws, there's something undeniably entertaining about watching Uwe Boll try and make his version at Lord of the Rings. Love it or hate it, In Name at King is Boll's magnum opus, sprawling, chaotic and occasionally brilliant fantasy film that's worth a watch but sheer audacity of it all. And there you have it, my definitive ranking of Uwe Boll video game movies. Agree? Disagree? Think I've lost plot? Let me know in comment. And before you head off, quick shout out, don't forget to jump on our Discord for a proper natter, follow me on Twitter to keep up with my rants and gaming updates, and joint channel memberships if you fancy some exclusive content. All links are in the description below. Smash that like button, hit subscribe and leave your comments and questions. Who knows, your comment might make it into a video. I'll see you next time, you magnificent.